We're family, we're together.
Wow.
You ready?
Nice to meet you, Eliana. What is he? Oh, cool.
All right, we're ready?
Actually, very active.
Okay.
In the American Trade Action for Palestine. Big stuff coming up next month that we started out. He'll be here in July.
Yeah, I'm here till
Buenos dias. Good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Delia Catalina Ramirez, and I represent the mighty Illinois 3rd Congressional District, the city of Chicago, and the northwestern suburbs. A year ago today, on a rainy, cold day, very different from today actually, with the backing of 21 members of Congress, we stood here to introduce the Block the Bombs Act to withhold weapons that were being used and continue to be used to level Gaza, displace millions, and murder a reported 54,000 Palestinians. And many of my own colleagues, organizations, and others told us we'd be lucky if we can get any additional members on that bill. That frankly, the members that had in fact joined, that number in itself was shocking. That the bill was extreme, that this bill was going nowhere. Well, here we are a year later on a sunny day. A year later with, as of today, 73 members of Congress who have taken the courageous action to become co-sponsors of this bill. That can confidently say we got more members, 51 more members to be clear since last year, that it is the first bill endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus directly related to the Israel-Palestine conflict. It is the first time any major caucus in Congress has endorsed legislation to end U.S. funding for the destruction of Gaza. So I think we can say that while some thought that the bill was extreme, it has in fact become pretty mainstream. But we also recognize that a year later, that Block the Bombs is needed more than ever before, and that we need to bring this bill to the floor and pass it. Because Trump and Netanyahu have continued their unlawful military operations across the Middle East. Despite of a ceasefire in Gaza since October 10, 2025, Israeli policies are prohibiting humanitarian aid from making it to Gaza. And at least 922 Palestinians have been killed with U.S.-made weapons, and thousands have been injured by Israeli forces since then. And the colonial settler violence in the West Bank, friends, it has not ended. Today, the Palestinian death toll has surpassed 72,000 people. And let's be clear, Trump and Netanyahu will keep expanding their wars so that they can continue to consolidate power, so that they can remain in office, and so that they can continue to profit off our pain. You see, in Lebanon, over 3,500 people have been killed by the Israeli military actions. In Iran, at least 3,468 people have been killed by U.S.-Israeli attacks. And they will not stop unless Congress has the moral clarity and the courage to act. So today, we are calling on Congress to have the moral courage and to act, so that we stop watching this catastrophe of U.S. complicity in destruction, in displacement, and this death unfold. And my colleagues know this well. There are colleagues in that place right there that have, in fact, enabled Trump and Netanyahu's abuses. They have watched children die in Palestine, in Iran, in Lebanon, and they have shrugged off requests for action with, well, it's complicated. Let me say to you, it is not complicated. It's grotesque. The United States and Israel are violating U.S. and international law, and this Congress has failed to stop them. But we have been clear that impunity cannot and should not be an option. It is why Americans across the country have continued to organize, demanding an end to the genocide, an end to excuses, to endless wars, and the blank checks for warmongers paid for with the suffering of children. And thanks to you today, Block the Bumps has become the litmus test for the type of representation the people want to see in Congress. Representatives who are pro-peace, who are pro-humanity, who are committed to a new world that is built on diplomacy, human rights, and cooperation. And we know, friends, that we cannot bomb our way to peace. That true safety is not realized at the end of the barrel of a gun, by a bomb, or via the chokehold of suppression or oppression. So I'm committed here today, more than ever, to work alongside our community organizations, our leaders around the country, and the 72 members of Congress who have already co-sponsored this bill, and this bipartisan bill, by the way, as of yesterday, to ensure that we, in fact, block the bombs, and that block the bombs becomes law in this country. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you for the organizing you do. And I'll tell you, this work that we do, we don't do it alone. I know that some of my colleagues are on their way, but I want you to hear from the executive director of the Gaza Genocide Center, Jihad Abu Salim. Oh, actually, she's here. Did you just? Okay. Well, see, and some are literally running as we speak. And just seconds ago, I turned around, didn't see a beautiful face. I am inspired every single day by the courage, the commitment, and resolve of this leader, and the way that she gives us space to also lead and speak up, and also patience and grace sometimes when some of us have to take a little longer to get there. But I'll tell you, I could not do this work, and we would not be here if it weren't for the courageous leadership of my colleague from Michigan, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Give it up for Representative Ramirez. She knows the first, I think, 6 months she was here, she was voting the right way. And I went up to her and I said, you know, I always joke around and say, are you married to a Palestinian? I think something of that sort. And she said, no, Rashida, my church took me to Bethlehem. And I think there's something powerful when you actually get to see it, and why I think that Representative Ramirez moves with the urgency to save lives no matter faith or ethnicity. I'm here to really express my incredible support for Block the Bombs. You know, every weapon we know that is sent to the Israeli apartheid regime right now is used to carry on the genocide in Gaza. So many people in Gaza feel forgotten right now, and we keep trying to uplift and make sure they know that we know the ethnic cleansing campaign continues, not only in Palestine, but now expanding in Lebanon. And we know that every bomb paid for, again, by U.S. dollars, is overwhelmingly opposed by Americans of all different political backgrounds. We know these war crimes of killing civilians, doctors, first responders, journalists, is something that the American people want to stop funding completely. We know entire families have been wiped out, entire villages erased. You know, we know that the violence only is possible because our country provides the ammunition and the green light over and over again. I'm proud to stand here with some of the most bravest members of Congress, and they are. I hope people remember they paved the way to continue to say the word Palestine, to continue to say Palestinians deserve to live. I'm so incredibly proud of Representative Ramirez as she leads with over 70 members of my colleagues. I could have never imagined being supporting Block the Bombs as we continue this urgent fight. I know, and many folks are understanding, the Nakba, which started in 1948, never ended. The media may turn its attention away from Gaza right now, but the death and destruction we know continues. We know the Palestinian people have been telling us for decades, even before this genocide. And I know later today we're going to be doing a War Powers Resolution vote about Lebanon, and I hope people will encourage their members to support it. We know that the ethnic cleansing campaign, when you see 11 children every single day being killed in Lebanon within 24 hours, that is not about security. That's what we call indiscriminate bombings, and it's a war crime. Americans want us to invest here at home. They want us not to invest in death and destruction and bombs. They want us to invest in clean water and housing and childcare and so much more. So many can't even afford to go to the doctor, yet we'll in a minute find money to continue the support of the government of Israel to bomb civilians. Every life we save is a universe in my mind. Every person we spare from this violence enables someone here at home to thrive and flourish. That's how I see it. Our fight to block the bombs is as urgent as ever. This change won't come from inside of Congress, and I remind people of that, and everybody behind here knows this. It is because regular citizens that do not share my faith or ethnicity has been showing up to town halls saying, why are you cutting SNAP and why are you starving Gaza? You seeing them come and say, why are we funding genocide but not health care at home? They are showing up in spaces and putting their members of Congress on notice that they're watching and they want this to end. I could have never imagined, again, my 7th year here, to see so many Americans of all different likes and all different communities across our nation stand with us and say, stop funding this genocide. And many of them now know what we stand for when we say block the bombs. So I want to thank you all so much. And again, thank you for the courageous and brave members, but also the advocates. They are not left alone, y'all. Their organizations are targets. And I cannot thank them enough for continuing their effort to save lives. With that, I'm going to ask Rabbi Liebling to come up and give us his remarks. Oh, hello. How are you? Thank you for being here.
Well, I can cross that off my bucket list, getting introduced by one of my heroes. So I'm Rabbi Mordechai Liebling from the Rabbinic Council of Jewish Voice for Peace. Pikuach Nefesh, the command to preserve life, is among the most important tenets of Judaism. Pikuach Nefesh, my moral obligation to do whatever I can to save lives, drives me to be here today, calling on Congress to halt the flow of bombs and lethal weaponry to the Israeli government as it carries out genocide, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. I want to be clear, the genocide is continuing. While the U.S. and Israel claim there is a ceasefire, we know what we are seeing with our own eyes. The Israeli military continues to bomb and kill Palestinian families, starve Gaza, and carry out ethnic cleansing across the occupied West Bank. The media has largely turned its eyes from Gaza, but we refuse to look away. The Block the Bombs Act was introduced 1 year ago. And now, as of yesterday, 73 members of Congress support it. This is historic, but it is not enough. American Jews who support freedom and justice for all will keep struggling and keep organizing until we have stopped the bombs, the warplanes, and the machinery of death that our government continues funneling to Israel. And in this current primary season, we are working with candidates who are winning, who support these positions. The Jewish community is all too familiar with genocide. I understand it personally. Both of my parents were Holocaust survivors. All of my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins were murdered before I was born. I never got to know any of them. I believe with all my heart that the phrase never again rings hollow, unless it means never again for anyone. Never again is now. The Israeli government, with the full backing and complicity of the U.S., has been massacring Palestinians and violently displacing millions from their homes, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank and now in Lebanon. It must end now, and we are the ones who must end it. The Block the Bombs Act is one critical first step toward ending U.S. complicity with genocide. We must save lives and create a pathway towards justice. And now I'd like to introduce Imam Abid Thompson from USCPR, the Political Action Director of USPCR.
Hello, everyone. My name is Iman, and I am the Political Director at the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights Action. I appreciate you all being here today, and I'm encouraged by your growing support, but my heart remains heavy. Just last night, Israel bombed Palestinians in Gaza City, burning 9 people alive, including a father, a mother, and 3 children. There has been no ceasefire. For almost 3 years, Israel has continued its genocide in Gaza and taken advantage of our politics to continue their campaign of death and destruction. For decades, Palestinians have been warning the American people of the global consequences of the unchecked Israeli aggression funded by our taxpayer dollars. A warning that the transfer of our weapons and unconditional aid was always being used to commit war crimes and sustain an illegal occupation. Palestine has become the model for domination and control and is being replicated across the region and beyond. Now, nearly 3 years into the genocide in Gaza, we are seeing the same tactics, the same weapons, the same narrative being used in Lebanon, Iran, and Syria. Israeli politicians and military officials have described their operations in southern Lebanon as a Gazification. The lesson they learned from Rafah is that the world will just watch as they forcibly displace civilians and systematically destroy every building in their path so that there is nothing to return to. These assaults are not only against some distant people in a faraway land. These are our assaults on our families, our neighbors, our friends. As a Palestinian with family still living in Palestine, I have heard the stories and seen through my family's eyes just how much more dangerous these last few years have been and how emboldened the occupier has been to violently restrict the lives of the people that I love. And make no mistake, just because the bombs are falling 1,000 miles away, the same violence, repression, and surveillance is already being deployed here at home. We are fortunate that there are people in power who recognize this reality and understand the role we must play. Each and every one of these members of Congress has chosen to take action and has chosen to listen to the people. Over 60% of Americans want to stop arming Israel, and these 72 members supporting the legislation are choosing their constituents over anyone else. This bill challenges the status quo and reaffirms our commitment to the U.S. and international law that for far too long has been subverted in favor of politics and profit. It is clear that we have so much more work to do. As we stand here today, the Foreign Armed Service Committee is trying to pass Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act that would further integrate the U.S. and Israeli military system to share weapons research and co-produce emerging technologies. Our work must continue. Even as tactics change, our goals remain the same. Thank you for your continued support, and we will stand with you in this pursuit of accountability. We will divest from death and invest in a better life here at home and abroad.
Thank you. I now want to introduce to you another colleague who is a co-sponsor of this bill, who continues to show up and continues to speak up. Who's been there a number of times and has personally experienced and seen the injustice and what is happening. Help me welcome Congresswoman Madeline Dean, PA4.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here with all of you because of the importance of this issue. I'm Madeline Dean. I represent suburban Philadelphia. I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee as well as the Appropriations Committee, a very important intersection of what we are talking about today. I have been to Israel, I think, 5 or 6 times, twice before October the 7th, and then 3 times or more since October the 7th. I've spoken to Mr. Netanyahu multiple times face to face to tell him to stop. But of course, we're not seeing him stopping. If anything, he has only escalated the war crimes that he has committed, that his coalition government have committed in Gaza, and I've witnessed personally in the West Bank. I've met with Palestinians. Some have come to Philadelphia for treatment for their children who are amputees as a result of the bombing, the destruction, the grotesque obliteration or attempt to obliterate Gaza and its people. And they are people of great dignity. We have to do better. We cannot continue to arm this set of war crimes. We cannot turn a blind eye. We know that Mr. Netanyahu banned journalists from going in, many journalists who were killed in Gaza. We will not let that happen. We will not let these crimes be covered up. And I want to say one last thing about humanitarian aid. It has been a problem since October the 7th, aid getting into Gaza. And why is that? The coalition government has blocked it over and over again. Even before the war with Iran, We were fighting to get full aid into Gaza. But so many trucks, as you well know, are lined up because of Israel refusing to get life-saving aid into Gaza, saying dual use, dual use. Forget about it. As the rabbi said, we are called to preserve life, to lift life. And the Jewish statement that I love, I'm Catholic, but I embrace it, is that to save one life is to save the whole universe. Let's be in the business of saving one life.
That's right. Thank you. And now you'll hear from my sister from the beautiful state of California, Congresswoman Latifah Simon.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Maris, for being a champion. I am extremely excited that it feels like every month there are more co-signers and co-sponsors.
We got one more today.
We got one more today. And everyone in that building behind me who took an oath of office, who claimed to uplift the values of this country and, frankly, international laws, should be right along with us. All block the bombs. You read the legislation, what it's calling for is for us to follow international law. As a Muslim, as someone who's coming from one of the most anti-war districts in the United States, I take very, very seriously our obligation to live by, again, human rights standards that are very clear, very clear. And I'll continue to work with my colleagues to advocate that we move block the bombs and get this bill on the floor. The United States of America should not in any ways capitulate with human rights violations. There are hundreds of thousands of Gazan children, of Palestinian children, who are literally fighting to survive in this very moment. While we continue to send aid and bombs, I think we should be clear, not red or blue, but as Americans, that we should put full bellies and humanitarian aid over bombs, particularly when you have hundreds of thousands of children and women and elderly folks who are starving, who are living in squalor. We are funding that humanitarian crisis. I think I only have one sentence left to say: block the bombs. Thank you all very much.
That's right. And now I'd like to introduce Jahad Abu Salim, the Executive Director of the Gaza Genocide Center.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm from Deir al-Balah in the middle of the Gaza Strip. I grew up spending time in Gaza City. I went to school there, I worked there, built friendships and memories there across years of my life. Gaza City was the cultural and intellectual heart of the Gaza Strip. It was where you went to study, to argue about ideas, to feel the full weight of the Palestinian experience in a thriving city. Gaza City, along other cities and towns in the Gaza Strip, have been destroyed. The schools I attended have been bombed. The streets I walked every day have been destroyed. The neighborhoods where my friends raised their children are rubble. The institutions that made Gaza City what it has been systematically dismantled, building by building. This is not collateral damage. This is the erasure of a place and the people in it. Since October 2023, more than 20,000 Palestinian children have been killed in Gaza. 20,000 children with names, with parents, with futures. They were killed by bombs, American bombs, delivered by American-supplied aircrafts, funded by American taxpayers. I work in documentation, and I have spent the past year building a record of what is happening, family by family, incident by incident. Today alone, 135 people could have celebrated their birthdays, but on our records, they are all gone. And that work has made undeniable what is happening. It's a genocide. It's man-made. It is policy, and it is deliberate and documented and ongoing. So, but policies can change. And I'm here today because Palestinian children deserve to live. Palestinian human beings deserve to live, because the people of Gaza deserve to live in dignity and honor and deserve a better life. So this is not just a political position. This is a human one. Block the bomb. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, at the beginning, I said to you that none of this work we do alone. But I'll tell you, I got to come into Congress 3.5 years ago. Sometimes it feels like 10. With someone who has been a friend even before we started this work in the halls of Congress. The Congressional Progressive Caucus would not have taken such a bold, courageous action in endorsing this bill if it weren't for the leadership, the authentic commitment, the collaborator, the organizer that is Congressman Greg Casar. So help me welcome Congressman Greg Casar, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Good morning. My name is Greg Casar. I represent the heart of Texas in Congress, and I'm proud to chair the Congressional Progressive Caucus. 1 year ago today, I was proud to join Congresswoman Ramirez and 20 other members of Congress to introduce the Block the Bombs Act. And today I am even more proud of our community for bringing together more than 70 members of Congress now supporting the Block the Bombs Act, which has now been endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus. This bill should have been passed the day it was introduced. And I know that a year is, in many ways, far too long. But also for all the people watching at home who wonder if your voice matters, if speaking out and marching and calling your member of Congress makes any difference. I want you to know that it has made an enormous difference, because something that at some point might have been considered completely not viable, that at first had only just over a dozen members of Congress, is now approaching a majority of Democrats in this Congress. And we need, clearly, to both take on the Republican Party, but also change who we are as a Democratic Party if we want to save lives. The idea behind the Block the Bombs Act is simple. The United States should not be supplying bombs that we know will be used to perpetuate one of the worst disasters of our lifetimes. We should not be sending bombs to a government that we know will use those bombs to kill civilians and destroy innocent people's infrastructure. We have seen what Bibi Netanyahu's government will do with American-made weapons. A genocide in Gaza, now thousands more dead in Lebanon. So someday our children will ask us what we did to stop this genocide. They will ask us what we did when we saw these terrible atrocities committed with our own weapons and our own money. I hope we will be able to answer that we passed this bill and stopped the violence and created peace. I am very proud that this bill has been endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and I'm honored to have been a small part of this alongside its brave author, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, and the brave movement of peace activists from all over the country, of all backgrounds, of all faiths, who've come together and said, it's time to block the bombs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to make this happen, I'll tell you, Jewish Voices for Peace has been with us from the very beginning. I want to introduce to you Beth Miller, the political director of JVP.
Good morning. My name is Beth Miller. I'm the political director of Jewish Voice for Peace Action, a grassroots, multiracial, cross-class, intergenerational movement of Jews who are organizing for Palestinian rights and freedom. I'm here today on behalf of JVP Action to say loudly and clearly that the U.S. must stop arming Israel now. The genocide against Palestinians has not stopped. The ethnic cleansing of Palestinians has not stopped. And Israel is now killing civilians in Lebanon, in Iran, and across the region. Since March 2nd, over 3,500 people have been killed by the Israeli military in Lebanon, and over 3,400 people have been killed by U.S.-Israeli attacks in Iran. And as I said, the siege, the atrocities, the destruction in Gaza continue every single day. And all of this is happening with the full complicity of the U.S. government. And not just over the last few years, but this is complicity over decades of occupation, of apartheid, of siege. Since Congresswoman Ramirez introduced this legislation alongside 21 other members, JVP Action members across the country have mobilized. They've met with their members of Congress, they showed up at town halls, they've driven letters, emails, calls, because American Jews are horrified by the genocide and apartheid that's being carried out by Israel, and they're fed up with the US government attempting to conflate our identities with the nation state carrying out these horrific crimes against humanity. The Block the Bombs Act has now grown in number to 73 members that are supporting it, and that is historic, and it's the result of incredible organizing that's been happening by the Palestinian Liberation Movement across this country. But that number is also horrifically low compared to the number of members of Congress that there are. And this bill is a bare minimum requirement, and it's a sign of how far we have to go, that the majority of members of Congress still want to send bombs to a country committing genocide. So that's why we're all going to continue to speak out. It is time for all of Congress to act. It is time to block the bombs. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Elizabeth Rebbe, MENA Advocacy Director of Amnesty International.
I'm honored to be here today as we mark the first anniversary of the Block the Bombs Act. Since its introduction last year, its passage has only grown more urgent. The Block the Bombs Act is currently the strongest piece of legislation we have in Congress that would effectively impose a partial arms embargo on Israel at a time when Israeli authorities are carrying out relentless violations of international law across the region. At Amnesty International, our teams have continued to document these violations as Israel entrenches its illegal occupation of Palestinian territory, as well as its apartheid system over the Palestinian people as a whole. In the occupied Gaza Strip, Israel's genocide against Palestinians is continuing. Entire families have been wiped out in Israeli attacks documented by Amnesty International. And in some of these cases, our teams were able to identify the use of U.S. origin weapons based on shrapnel found at the scene of the crime. Some of these weapons are the very weapons listed in this bill that would be prohibited. Israel has also utterly decimated Gaza's infrastructure and healthcare system and continues to severely restrict the entry of life-saving aid. This amounts to deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of Palestinians in Gaza. In the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Israel continues to displace Palestinians by expanding its illegal settlement enterprise and escalating state-backed settler violence. The impunity Israel has enjoyed has given it free rein to repeat these unlawful patterns elsewhere. Similarly, in Lebanon, Amnesty has documented how Israel has accelerated the destruction of southern border villages, which has driven mass displacement in the country. At the same time, Israel continues to carry out unlawful and deadly attacks on civilians in Lebanon. Likewise, in Syria, our teams have documented Israel's deliberate destruction of civilian homes and agricultural land, once again displacing civilians and destroying their livelihoods. Amnesty International will continue to demand that each and every member of Congress sign on in support of this bill and take action to cut off the flow of arms that are fueling Israel's atrocities. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Margaret DeRoos, the Executive Director from IMEU Policy Project.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be with you to commemorate the one-year anniversary of the Block the Bombs Act. More than 70 members of Congress and counting co-sponsored this historic legislation to block weapons to Israel. As a Palestinian and Lebanese American, I never thought I would be able to say those words. This progress, though long overdue and far too small, deserves recognition. However, it's important to acknowledge what got us here. Over 70,000 Palestinians have been killed during Israel's genocide, and we know that is likely a severe undercount. Homes, schools, hospitals, entire neighborhoods and cities reduced to rubble. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 42,000 Palestinians sustained life-changing injuries during the genocide. 1 in 4 of them is a child. Israel has created in Gaza, with U.S. taxpayer-funded weapons, the largest group of child amputees in modern history. For the tens of thousands of Palestinians we lost to Israel's violence, and the 2 million more living in a perpetual nightmare. We must continue to work to make bills like this the status quo in Congress. And I wish that we could spend today soaking in this bill's unprecedented growth. But unfortunately, as we speak, the House Armed Services Committee is marking up the fiscal year 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, which aims to intertwine the U.S. and Israeli militaries more than ever before. Buried deep in this bill is Section 224, which establishes the U.S.-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative, an effort to further embed Israel's weapons manufacturing with the U.S.'s through the co-production of weapons and expanded coordination on everything from training to information sharing. It is unfathomable that this is the American response to a country that has over the past 2.5 years carried out a genocide against Palestinians and started wars in both Iran and Lebanon. I'm grateful to members of Congress that are standing up with us here today, and a special thank you to Congresswoman Delia Ramirez for introducing the Block the Bombs Act and spearheading an effort in Congress that we can be proud of. And now I will turn it back to Congresswoman Ramirez for any questions.
So I got to get to committee. Committee's waiting for me to start, so I have to go. But are we ready to block the bombs? Yes. No. That was a practice. Are we ready to block the bombs? Yes. Are we going to talk to members of Congress about how we stand up for humanity, how we stand up for children, how we stand up for peace, and how we block the bombs? So, folks, let's continue to work until Block the Bombs is, in fact, passed, and its principles of diplomacy, international law, oversight, and accountability are reflected in the law of the land. Let's block the bombs now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Want to do a quick picture? Quick. All right, Nancy. Do we have the signs up? Signs up? Here. Could I get a sign? Sorry.